Parashat Chukat. This is Leilui Nishmat Aaron ben Zulai and also Freya bat Sarah. The pasuk says, "Vayisu me'or ha'ar derech Yam Suf," and they traveled from the place called Hor ha'ar through via Yam Suf, the Red Sea, lisvov et Eretz Edom, go around the land of Edom because they didn't want to let him in. Wow, you shaved your beard, man. Vatiktsar nefesh ha'am baderech, and the people along the way became very impatient. Very impatient. Vayidaber ha'am be'elokim uve'Moshe, and they start to complain about God and Moshe, and they said, Lama ha'elitanu mimitzrayim lamut bamidbar. Why did you bring us up to the desert? Took us out of Egypt to die in the desert. Ki en lechem ve'en mayim, there's no bread and there's no water. Ve'nafshenu katsa balechem haklokal, and we had enough from this rotten bread that you're giving us. In other words, the man, right? If we're going to apply it, we're not going to talk about cows today. All right, red cows or purple rain. I'm not going to talk about any of these things. Purple haze. I'll talk about something that maybe we could apply to our times because I think it's very relevant. Junior, take some stuff. Now, if we're going to talk directly about how you, me, and so on and so forth might slip between the cracks, so let's talk about a little bit. Let's try to bring it into a concept of a company or a managerial job. If you were ever a manager or in charge of something, one thing for sure that you don't want to hear is to hear complaints. Yeah. Oh man, I just mentioned your grandma. Nobody likes to hear complaints. Now, and complaining for the sake of complaining, even though it's legitimate and sometimes needed, I'm so happy you came. Even though it's legitimate and sometimes needed to make a stand, and it's important to voice your opinion, however, not necessarily that need to voice your opinion is creating a legitimacy for complaining that is not professional. Now, you guys, some of you are working, some of you will go to work once you finish with college, and I hope you remember that. So, but regardless of that, whoever is sensitive to the feeling and to the mood of the people that work for him could really listen very carefully, to what's going on. Where would you listen to it? In the hallway, in the coffee corner, and you're going to hear that complaining worker that always, then there's usually one or two people that always complain. They're like serial complainers. Serial complainers, not because maybe because they always do it by the cereal, but also because they don't stop complaining, right? And not always his complaints are clear. Like, I don't understand. What are you complaining about? And I'm sure you've seen this many times. Sometimes people complain they have too much work. Okay, one second. You have too much work. What do you want? You want to have no work? Not a problem. Goodbye. Go home. Now, but mainly what's really interesting about those complaints really explain what is not okay, but almost never don't include with them the most critical part, and the critical part is what? What could we do to make things better? If you're going to tell me, listen, this is bad and this is bad and this is not so good, and I think that if we'll do A, B, and C, so that's terrific. That's fine. That's a valid. It's not, even though it's a complaint, but it's not a valid complaint. It's not a complaint. It's a valid opinion. And you know what? I would like to hear you. Lama lo. But just there are people that always have problems, as Jonathan's fathers always say. Always have problems and never have solutions. Okay, what's your solution? I don't know, you're the boss. Okay, I don't want to hear your complaint. So those complaints, for example, or for example, how could you influence, or how could you change it? That's never going to be. So of course, if you pay close attention, those complaints usually would start with the level of sugar in the kitchen, or the type of coffee you have, or what kind of cornflakes you're going to have there. And at the end, they're going to come about to become complaints on professional conduct and how the boss runs the company and so on and so forth. So what could we learn from those things? There's something that we need to learn and something that we have to learn. So what can we learn? That secret, Baal HaAkedah explained to us. He is very aware of this very exciting and interesting ordeal that is happening on in this week's portion. After the kingdom of Edom, which we said before, which were descendants of Esav, just need to remind you, the twin brother of Jacob, in other words, the uncle of Am Yisrael, right? That kingdom refuses to allow the Jews to pass by their territory on the way to Eretz Israel, and really forces the Jewish people to make a huge detour deep into the desert. Because if you know the topography of that part, basically they had to go, in order to pass it, all they had to do is to come, if this is the sea, the Red Sea, they were coming from Sinai, going from Dizahav, right, to Nueba, to where is Elah today, and they will go in. But Edom says, no, buddy, you can't do that. So what do they need to do? They need to go all the way east, bypass Edom, and then go west. That's a huge detour. Oh, I couldn't see who it is for a second. They had to make a huge detour to go like this, which really, with, let's say, 3 million people, it's a big hassle. Both in terms of logistics and just dealing with the people. So, and especially, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel fair, especially after you've been chugging along for 40 years in the desert. You just want to get already to the promised land. But they said no, that's not going to happen. So what do the people do? What do the people do? The people complain about the man, the heavenly bread that comes from Shamayim. That's what they're complaining about, because that's what it says. That bread, that miraculous entity that came down every morning, that's what they call lechem klokal, rotten bread? I mean, it was food fit for angels. Whatever you put in your mouth, it tasted like. Texture and taste and everything. And you call this bad? What's going on here? It just doesn't make sense. Now, if you look at this, it becomes even more peculiar, since the bread was not, or the man was not really the reason for their complaint. The reason for their complaint was the refusal of Edom to let them go through the territory, and the fact that they had to make a huge detour. That's why they complain. But why are you complaining about the bread? It just doesn't make sense. Now, I'm going to tell you, now you might see that a lot of the people, of those complainers that you know in your life, most of the time would complain about something that has nothing to do with the problem, and the question is, why does it happen? They're not going to complain about what really the problem is. They're going to complain about something else, and what is that something else, and why do we do that? So it seems like when a person is complaining, or we're dealing with a complainer, a serial complainer, he simply picks on the first thing that comes his way, the easiest thing for him that comes his way that he can see, and on that he unleashes his frustration and his bitterness inside of him. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Basically, the man became the scapegoat for his frustration about something else. So let's say, for example, let's say argument's sake, let's say I'm unhappy with my life, right? So instead of making a change with my life, who am I going to complain about? All of a sudden, out of the blue, without any reason whatsoever, does not make sense, I'm complaining about Idan. Right? Meanwhile, Idan is a great guy, does me favor all the time. No, complain about Idan. Why? He's the easiest target. I mean, I don't need to give you examples. I'm sure you all know, more than enough examples about that. And that's something you need to remember. So this is how we're going to start unraveling this thing, which is fascinating. I mean, if you think about it, you'll see that this is correct 100%. 100%. You complain sometimes about things that have nothing for you to do, and he says, "Oh, that's I don't know, the weather, the fact it's raining or not raining." But to deal with the problem, you won't deal with the problem. By the way, this is what happens nowadays also in Israel. The rift that is coming out, which is drives me crazy to a level of a physical pain between the Haredim and the Chilonim in Eretz Israel. The Chilonim pick on the Haredim about going to the army, right? Without getting into the should, I think they should, but never mind. They pick on them. But I asked a question. I asked somebody today a question. I said, one second. When we were kids, 1973, there were about 3 million Jews in Israel. 3 million Jews. And there was a giant war that, between officially Egypt and Syria and Israel, but so many Arab countries sent support, Morocco, Libya, everybody sent support. We finished the job in 3 weeks, and yet nobody said that there's shortage of soldiers. Today there are 9 million Jews in Israel, and all of a sudden not enough people to go to the army? I don't understand. So the secular pick on the Haredim because they are the easiest frustration. Instead of looking at let's see what's going on here. The Haredim have their own problem, right? Unfortunately, not such a healthy situation over there. So we're going to pick up. They're going to pick up the secular. Oh, you are unleashing a religious war against us. You want to make us unfrum. They don't want to make you unfrum. They want you to go to the army. I don't understand. I know many extremely frum people that I can tell you so much frumer than me. They went to the army. Nothing happened to them. And yet I know people who went to Yeshiva and they're completely off the derech. I don't understand this mahala. I understand. I know why. But we don't deal with the problem. We pick on the easiest target we have. And by calling it a religious war, okay, so right now we don't have to deal. We're not going to solve the problem. We have a war. You're going to go to here. I'm going to go to there, and that's it. And do we need this in this time and in this time of day? That we need this rift among us? And that's why there is no leaders today in Israel, not religious leaders. And I'm willing to stand behind my words. And if somebody doesn't like it, I can show them to the refrigerator. They can take some cold water with ice and then chill themselves out. I don't really care. There are no religious leaders and there are no secular leaders. And this is the fulfillment of the nevuah that comes in Isaiah chapter 3. That at the end of the day, I'm going to remove from you anything and anyone you lean on. Especially your leaders, because they refuse to rebuke you appropriately when they had the chance. Too much concern about themselves. You don't believe me? I think it's a good idea to open Isaiah and read it, but back to back. Why stop there? You don't want to read Isaiah. You know what's going to happen to you? You're going to end up with Jeremiah. And you know what happens with Jeremiah? You go to exile. Yeah. So now, so if you look at this, a person who is good, and he's happy, and he's appreciative, first of all appreciative, He's not going to complain about the type of coffee he has. He says, "Oh, thank God I don't have to buy coffee. It's good. So okay. If I don't like it, I won't drink coffee. I'll bring my own." He doesn't complain about the cornflakes, or he doesn't talk about what kind of program. When they had those days, they're putting everybody together. Like how do you call those days? Companies, they take all the workers together and they do
company retreat.
Company, Not convention, but they do like activities together to make everybody.
Team building.
Team building, yes. So a person like this is not going to complain about the team building, curriculum that they had. He's going to say, "Oh, Baruch Hashem, I don't have to work today. We're going to play some games. I don't know, do some rock climbing. That's terrific. I like it." But the complainers will complain about everything. He complains about the work that he has to do, and when they send him to play games, he complains about that as well. It's not a way to live life, Rabotai. So what did our people, Am Yisrael, complain in Kadesh? So if we're going to ignore all these harsh words of Israel and so on and so forth, if you look at this, the real complaint itself comes down to maybe three words. And it's like, En umayim en lishtot. There's no water to drink. What do you mean? You talking about no water to drink? You're talking about being thirsty? Even the Torah says, it says, Velo haya mayim la'edah. The Torah says, right? Right? So if there's no water, so therefore there's no water to drink. But that comes to that. The Ralbag writes that the first advantage in your midot, in your spiritual trends and qualities, is to really to tell you, to notify you, she'en ra'ui leganot ha'adam me'od me'od. It's not appropriate to criticize a person tremendously. במה שיתיח מהדברים שלו כעוגן בשעת הצער והחיסרון החזק. In other words, when a person is bitter, don't give him musar. Leave him alone. Sometimes when people lose somebody dear, something terrible happens, and the people feel tremendous grief, they're going to ask you a question: where is God? Where is this? Where is that? Don't start giving them lectures now, where is God? Don't give them lecture like this. A person is feeling anger. So that's another angle of looking at this. We're talking about now something that really happened. They didn't have water. So when a person is feeling stress, don't yell at him. Don't give him musar. Just disengage. Say, listen, buddy, if you need me, I'm here, and so on and so forth. Because she says, and you should see, because when Am Yisrael was in great agony from being so thirsty, they were afraid they're going to die because of the severity of the thirst. And therefore they really spit it out against Moshe. And yet, we didn't find them being punished for that. We found them being punished when they complained about no reason. But when they complained to Moshe there's no water, they weren't punished for that. But we need to remember that Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted the water to come to them in a certain way. And that's the way he chose. So we need to also understand that sometimes, actually most of the time, all of the time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is involved with our lives all the time. And if you ever complain, listen, so you have to understand that that's what it is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want. Let's say you need parnasa, very, very hard. And it's difficult. And you're really trying. But it just doesn't go your way. Don't say, where is God? And if you hear somebody saying this, don't rebuke him. But that person needs to understand that this is how Kadosh Baruch Hu wants him to do. There is a reason. Probably beyond our ability to understand right now in a moment, because we are deep in the pain, in the grief. But there's a reason. That's why Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to happen. There is a complete involvement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our lives, in all aspects of our life, and if that's what happened, that's what God wanted to happen, and that's it. And don't rebuke the people when they're feeling this pain. However, when the complaint is real, as we say, real, there was no water. Even if it was said in inappropriate manner, right? It doesn't bring. By the way, you want some chula and tokulo? would not bring a punishment right after that. And Am Yisrael were in great distress. That's why they weren't punished when they spoke inappropriately towards Moshe. But what usually is the complaint, right? But what was the complaint about? And a similar complaint was Ein lechem ve'en mayim. There's no bread and there's no water. But the Ralbag says the complaint was not about the water. The complaint, according to him, the complaint is just a complaint with no reason. And this is what the Torah is referring, is not about the lack of water, as we said beforehand, because Am Yisrael were not so thirsty, and he is still there complaining. They had Be'erah Shel Miriam all the time. When they were coming out of Mitzrayim, there was no water, so they asked for water, right? Or they didn't have water, so Moshe, but for that they didn't punish. Moshe, when he hit the rock, was punished. But the complaint was a complaining in vain. And complaining in vain was al she'en lechem ve'en mayim. There's no bread and there is no water. And of course, it seems a little wondrous because they had man every single day. So why are you telling me that there's no bread? I mean, you had food. You were not hungry. When you wanted meat, you complained. Okay, so Kadosh Baruch Hu gave you the quails and you ate, but whatever. But you had food. So why are you? What is the essence of this complaint? And again, whether you're going to be therapists one day, or you're going to be bosses one day, or you're going to be, or you have friends, you're going to come with people that would complain to you. You need to be able to go down to the bottom of that complaint. What is really bothering you? And what bothers Am Yisrael here, when they complain about the bread, is not that there is no bread, because there was bread. They complain about something else completely. And to that answer, the Rabbeinu Bechaye answers something beautiful. He says, and I'm quoting, Aval zu hayta tlunatam. That was the complaint. What was the complaint? Amru, hine inyanenu meshuneh. Our conduct is very weird. What's weird about it? Ein lanu lechem umayim. We don't have bread and water. But in parentheses, like the rest of the people, like the rest of the nations. What does it mean? It means because the rest of the nations, right? If they were righteous or they were wicked, guess what? They had plenty of bread. They had plenty of bread. And needless to say, water. Hey, did you see how much water goes in Niagara Falls? I mean, if you take the amount of water that goes in Niagara Falls in one day, you basically can put Israel underwater. I mean, there's so much water goes there. How much water is in Germany? The rivers that flow all the time. In England, it doesn't stop raining. In Israel, there's no water. The Jews had enough. We want to be like everybody else. We don't want to get food based on our merits. We want to be like all the Goyim. By the way, I don't know about you, but for me, it reminds me the difference between, a similar story that happened way before that, but 3,000 years before that. When Adam HaRishon was in Gan Eden, what he had to do to eat? Nothing. It's just everything is there. But after, it was vegetarian at the time. I think maybe that's why it was good looking. I don't know. But after the sin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu seems to do something very weird. He so-called curses the snake and curses men. And mankind is, Bezeat apecha tochal lachem, you're going to sweat for your food. You're going to sweat for your bread. But to the snake, he says, you're going to eat dirt and you're going to crawl. Now, snake does eat dirt, and the reason they eat dirt to digest whatever they eat. So in a way, if you're going to eat dirt, I don't see what's the curse about it. There's dirt everywhere. In other words, the snake is never going to be missing food. As long as there is earth, there's going to be dirt, and there's going to be something for the snakes to eat. So what's the curse about that? The curse is in this extra giving, and pay close attention. And next time you feel that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not giving you what you think you should or you deserve to get, you think very carefully, because you're missing the point. The point is like this: HaKadosh Baruch Hu had enough with the snake. He said, "You know what? I'm going to give you so much food. I don't want to hear you complaining. Please, Ribbon Shalom, send me food. I don't want to hear it. Here, take all the food that you eat from now until the end of time. Eat. Don't want to hear you." Adam HaRishon, Bechir, he was the crown of creation. You messed up, but you're dear to me. You're going to work hard, and you're going to pray to me because I want to hear your voice. The Jews don't understand. And we don't understand. And if you think that only secular Jews want to be like the Goyim, you're wrong. I'll tell you that, even you. How many of you are really proud to look like a Jew, or you try to do whatever you can in your power not to look like one? And that starts, that's right. And that starts with looking like a Jew, like, for example, growing a beard. Short, long, doesn't make a difference. Jews have beard. If you look at, even at Sancherib, when he made the plaque, the Jews had a beard. Jews always had a beard. It's a sign of a Jewish person. How about your tzitzit? Do you wear your tzitzit all the time, or you take it off the first chance you have? If we're lucky, Bichlal, if you put it on. How can you go to work without wearing a tzitzit? Oh, Rabbi, it's hot. Okay, it's hot, but it's okay, I'm a Jew. And by the way, don't tell me it's hot when I catch you going over there to Bermuda, sitting down in the sun, shrimping yourself out like a lobster in heat, all day long, and over there it's not hot. I mean, don't tell me it's hot. We have to stop with this. You don't understand. The more we want to be like the Jews, the Goyim, the more the Goyim hates us. So they didn't want to have this anymore. Says Rabbeinu Bechayei, we want to be like the rest of the nations. But our all conduct, the way of being judged, we eat, we drink, it's all a renewal thing. And if you would listen to all my commands, I will give you enough rain, I will give you enough food. You don't want to do that? You're not going to keep my mitzvot? Not a problem. I'm going to close the switch. You're not going to get water. You're going to have a drought. You're going to have heat. You're not going to have food. You're going to have a problem. And why is that? Because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants our conduct. So that goes, by the way, the same thing for your parnasa. That goes the same thing to finding a shoe. That goes to anything. And by the way, not necessarily what you want, you should know, is always good for you. Not necessarily everything that you want is good for you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows better what's good for you. So maybe the reason why you don't get what you want, or you think it's actually good for you, not bad for you. Just think about that. It's understanding that we need to live our lives in a different thing. I told you down in the car something funny, not funny, interesting, that somebody said to me today. He said, you have to stop, not me, but people, making yourself broke, trying to impress other broke people. By making a bigger wedding than the other guy, by buying a bigger house than the other guy, by moving to the better neighborhood than the other guy. Meanwhile, you're broke, and he is broke also. And it's like a conversation of fools. Real rich people don't need to show off anything. So change your mindset. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. No one. And that's a Jewish problem. We want everybody to love us. And if nobody loves us, if not everybody loves us, we have a problem. We are willing so much to make everybody love us that we are even willing to give up our own identity of who we are in terms of Torah, Mitzvot, and Judaism, and probably Eretz Israel as well. Why do you think they gave back Judea and Samaria? Why do you think they gave back Judea and Samaria? It's not the West Bank. It's called Judea and Samaria. Yehuda v'Shomron. You know why they don't even use this term? Because they don't want to acknowledge. Why? Because it's easier to give it away. You know why they gave it away? To make nice. Because they wanted to get a Nobel Peace Prize. That's why. That's why. You don't have any dignity to yourself. Don't expect anybody to treat you with dignity. You don't honor yourself, don't expect anybody to honor you. And that's the problem with the Jews. When they were complaining about the bread, they had bread every day. Because they didn't want it in that way. They want to do it like anybody else. And not only that, Am Yisrael and the man is a good indication. And now you can take this statement that Chazal tells us, En man yored ela leochzeh Torah. Now what does it mean? It means, we know about the man, you couldn't store it. Like, you know, in America, you can take, you have granaries, you can feed the whole entire world 3 times over. We store food. When you had the man, you couldn't store it. They didn't want it. Why? I don't want to be judged according to I want to live my life without God. That's the problem. I don't want God in my life. I want to be like everybody else. I can store my food. I could make my, baga bag. I want to be like everybody else. I don't want to be a Jew. Being a Jew requires you to be on your A game all the time. Give account to all your actions all the time, every day, every moment. You don't want that. It's not the bread the problem. The bread is not the problem. Your attitude is the problem. And ultimately, the problem that you had is that you don't want God. You don't want God in your life. Now, Am Yisrael, and by the way, this is something that Am Yisrael was never able to really shake off themselves, right? Because the prophecy that says Am levadad yishkon, you're going to be a nation that dwells alone. Am Yisrael didn't want to be dependent all day long, every single day, by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They would rather be dependent on foreign nations, in the mercy of nations, whether it's Rome or England or the United States or whoever it is, rather than to be dependent on God. Now, when I tell you the problem is your attitude, I really mean that. Another thing that Am Yisrael complain about when they're talking about the bread, the rotten bread, as Rabbeinu Bechayai says, he says, "Ve'od ki oto lechem haba elenu davar yom beyomo lechem klokalu." Right? It's a what kind of a bread is that? It's a bad bread. Why? Because Am Yisrael said, there's a miracle happen here every day, but they didn't say there's a miracle. They said there's something wrong with the bread itself. Why? And he says, "V'chi yesh yelod isha." Is there any human shemachnis, that put something in his mouth velo motzi? Because we know that was spiritual bread, and spiritual bread, they didn't have to use the bathroom for all this time because all saturated. It was 100% nutrition in the body. There was no need to do the selection in the body. And they said, that's going to clog us. It's terrible. What do you mean clog you? For 40 years you're okay. Now it's bad. But they were complaining about that. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's intent was really for Am Yisrael, for the benefit of Am Yisrael. And Rabbeinu Bechayai says the following, "V'zoi hadiba she'otziu baman, shaya lahem lechavod u'lema'ala, hinotnim bo dofi." They received the man because they were on such a high level. And yet, they complain about this. Why? Ki lema'alat dor hamidbar, the level of the people that were in the desert, kemalachei hasharet haya, they were like angels. Ve'haman haya ba lahem davar yom b'yomo, and it came to them every single day. Why? Kedei sheyu enehem tzluyot tamid el Hashem, so they could always look at God or look for God and looking for this connection with God. And says, "Poteach et yadecha u'masbiya lekol chai ratzon." That was the reason for that. The Kadosh Baruch Hu gave us, as it says in Tehillim chapter
7.
132.
141. 150.
Do I hear 123? Verse
12.
2.
I lost my head actually.
Va'inu keinei avadim al yad adolehem, and we were like slaves in the hands of the masters. And this Rabbeinu Chaya says, "Va'yan yalem la'argil nafsham b'midat habitachon va'emunah." The man came, so they had 40 years to practice on emunah, belief, and trust in Hashem. They didn't trust Him. And you tell me how bad it is for them not to trust Him. I'm going to ask you this: how about you? Do you trust Hashem? Now I'm going to tell you something. You know, we're all afraid. We're afraid of this one, we're afraid of that one, and this leader, and that leader, and this one. But it does not make a difference, and you should know, I'm going to tell you something now very important to your life. It does not make a difference how brutal, cruel, mean is the person you're dealing with. At the end of the day, he's only and also a human. Since he's a human, he has nothing for you to be afraid of. You need to come to terms with that. There will be many things, there are many elements that will try to, implant you with this fear. But they're people also. Even in Machshimo, Rasha Merusha Sinwar. It's only a person.
It's the monkey.
Not to be afraid of. It's to deal with. And you got to dish him whatever he wants to dish you, just double. Don't be afraid. We live our life from fear and lack of emunah. And because there's lack of emunah and there is fear, we have lack of bitachon. And bitachon does not just mean trust in Hashem. Bitachon means secure. We don't feel secured. We don't feel safe. And that's not because, there is liberal agenda against the Second Amendment. It has nothing to do with how many guns you have and how many bullets you have and how if it's 45 Magnum or 44 Special. It has nothing to do with that. Because that could be taken away from you. And eventually the bullet can run out. Your feeling safe has to do with your connection and understanding of how God interacts with you and how He interacts with the world. Now, the dependence in God is kavod ve'ma'ala, he says. It's a badge of honor. What do we say in Hallel? Tov betoach me'Hashem betoach be'endivim. In all Sephardic Siddur, can you give me the blue Siddur? In all Sephardic Siddurim, you just moved the table, thank you very much. In all Sephardic Siddurim, there is something that years ago I found in my grandfather's Siddur that is about, 180 years old. And it goes like this, if I find it. Let me find it somewhere. Maybe there's so many Shinuyei Nuschaot here. I need to find. Just give me a second. Hold on 1 minute. Hold on. He doesn't have it here. Oh my goodness. So let me look at the other one. Just one second. I need to read it for you. Hold on. If I don't find it, I don't find it. I'll tell it to you by heart. Anyway, so it says over there, "Ve'al tatzichenu lided masad, but not basar v'adam ve'lo lidei alva'atam," right? And right after that, we don't have it, but they have it in parentheses that the gift is small, and they give it to you with a sour face.
שמתנה מעוטה וחבטה מרובה.
Now, yes, and if somebody gives it, I can't find it today. That's just happened. It's okay. If you find it, find it. So now, we feel safer to ask people to help us than to ask God to help us. Because we know, ultimately, deep down inside, regardless of how much you don't acknowledge God, that ultimately God is more real than all of us. And if you ask something, you will have to give something in return. When you go to a person, all you need to do is to cast another vote in your thing, and you think you're good. That's how I say. That was actually yes. It goes like this. Right? You should give us comfort from all our hardship. ואל תצריכנו השם אלוקינו, and don't make us come to be needed לידי מתנת בשר ודם, for any gifts of humans, ולא לידי הלוואתם, any favors from them. Why? שמתנתם מועטה, they give you very little, וחרפתם מרובה, and the disgrace is great. אלא לידך מלאה, רחבה, עשירה והפתוחה, and so on and so forth. Easier for us to beg the government to get money than to ask for Hashem, because you know that Hashem will say, okay, fix it, then I'll do it. And the problem is, even if the reason why you don't even want to speak to Hashem is because if He answers you, but now you know you have to do it. So you would rather not get it and live in an imaginary world that some person will give you. The disgrace is great. So, and this is the level of Malachei HaSharet, the Bnei Israel got while in the desert, and that state is not constant. It does not stay forever, but was for the people in the Midbar. And the reason, as we said, to make their emunah. Now, and the idea was when Am Yisrael will enter the land, enter the promised land, when Am Yisrael, the Jewish nation, will enter the land of Israel, not the land of Palestine. It's another invention of the 20th century. Don't let anybody believe, they'll make you believe that there is such thing as Palestinians. It's an invention. There's no such thing. But that's why I call them Palestine. The idea was that they're going to come in and they're going to start benefiting from their own hard work, and in a way might not be so dependent to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but so what, you should go into the land? No, because when you work and you now have the bitachon and emunah, you could actually achieve great things. In the desert they couldn't do anything. You can't grow anything. You can make factories, you can build nothing. So the desert was the time to get bitachon. When they enter Eretz Israel was the time to do great things, and only to do it through bitachon and through emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And by doing so to be mekadesh Shem Shamayim Barabim, and all the people will say, oh my goodness, look at this, what's going on there, it's crazy. And you think I'm telling you stories? I'm not telling you stories. Eretz Israel, before the Jews were able to return, by the way, the Jews in Israel is the biggest decolonization ever. We are finally coming back to our land after 2,000 years. Tell this to all the left-wing lunatics out there, and all the idiot Jews who are left-wing lunatics. They think the Messiah was president a few presidents ago. When Am Yisrael start to come back, for crying out loud, they were able to grow fish in the desert. In the Negev, they grow fish. The land responds to them. Eretz Yisrael is green. I have books at home. Thank God I have these books. There's pictures, old pictures. 1912, 1917.
Barren.
Barren. You go now, you look, green everywhere. The land responds to the Jews, but it needs to be done with emunah. Look, this tiny little place. There are 9 million people. For crying out loud, there are more people living in New York City than they live in Israel. Israel is about the size of Jersey. It's probably almost as long as Long Island. Think about it. And look what they do there. You know why? Because of that. We need to do be'emunah. And we need to stop complaining. We need to roll our sleeves and start doing. But Am Yisrael did not understand that. Am Yisrael did not get the drift. And that's why when they complain about the man, they were complaining about their dependency on God. And instead of rejoicing and to be thankful and grateful, they complained. And unfortunately, we still suffer from the same defect until today. Instead of putting ourselves together to say secular, not secular, Ashkenazi, Sfaradi, Yeshivish, not Yeshivish, those divisions are for losers, not for us. Let's put our shoulder together, brother to brother. Let me ask you a question. In every religious family, everybody is super religious? No, there's the brother or the cousin or the daughter who is off. Why, you're going to hate them because they're off to there? It's your brother, it's your sister, it's your son or your daughter. Don't be like those primitive people that if one of their children goes off the derech, they put them in cherem, they excommunicate him, they sit shiva on him. That doesn't help the agenda here. People bringing people together. You should say, listen, always leave a door open. Always leave, not a window, a door open. And make sure that that person knows the door open. Always there. Say you love him and you love her. Whatever they do. Even if it's Isur Torah Chamur. Never close the door for tshuva. How could we close the door on tshuva on our brothers and sisters who gave themselves dying to save other Jews? I don't understand that. Don't hold it to yourself so much that you're doing mitzvot and you are the savior of Am Yisrael. The savior of Am Yisrael is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not you. And we need to understand that. To bring unity together to Am Yisrael, to solve that problem, can only be done in one way to start, is to stop complaining. See, Baruch Hashem, what we have, how much we have, how blessed we are in what we have. Only through that, and only through that, we can start smiling and appreciating and loving one another for the unity of Am Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom.